Okay. Um, Looks to be about 6. Hopefully this will go better than last time. That's why I put up the poll. So hopefully we'll draw more people than last time. Hey, I Red Riot. Actually, literally just got up. I still am working overnight, so my voice is a little deep or weird sounding. That's why. 2 people looks like. Um, yeah, so I think it was the 18th of December was 3-year anniversary for the channel. Um, the Anytime I go back and look at the old stuff I did, I kind of cringe inside. Um, uh, well, I mean, I'm happy with where I'm at now. I've pretty much always been striving to make my videos better and better. So, um, but kind of lets me know how much I've improved, and it's nice to look back, but sometimes, like I say, it's a little gives me a little bit of a cringe to see what I was doing up, just the quality of the videos and whatnot. Because I started out the channel, and then it's reflected in the title, Star Wars Opinion. Uh, I was making like opinion type videos on various types of lore or potentially real world like news type events, and I don't know it. Within 6 months, it started to morph. Um, because I did a compilation of the Emperor's theme. Must have been 6 or 8 months after I started the channel, and I did that mainly because I had seen that yeah, there's a number of folks on YouTube who put together music suites. Um, the one that I struck me in particular was one that had a number of versions of the Imperial March. That was, I don't know, 25, 30 minutes long. What I kind of wanted to see was, well, first of all, that one already then was out of date. There'd been a number of Imperial March versions that had been added music wise uh, since that had been made. I think it was 3 years old at the time, the video that is. So I initially wanted to do something like that, but I knew it was going to be a long thing. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just do the Emperor's theme because that won't be as long and it won't be as involved to put together. So I did that, and there were a number of people who really liked that. So I kind of just continued off of that, um, and started putting those together. Uh, I think the third one I did was Kylo Ren actually, and the second one was at the time I was one of those people who was kind of hoping, kind of theorizing that potentially Snoke would be revealed to be Darth Plagueis. Obviously, that was not the case. Oh yeah, thank you. Those two are have been pretty popular, Vader and Emperor. Um, I think right now the most viewed theme from the playlist is probably the Second Sister. Now, part of that reason for that is because that's I haven't really updated that per se at the time. Well, and it's probably the only time with theme compilation video that I've been kind of ahead of the game because at the time the game was just coming out. One person had uploaded one cue, and I found a second one. I put them together and I uploaded that. And so I was like second on the scene, and that's why it shot up in views. And I think it's still the most viewed video on my channel right now. Like with the Emperor, I think at one point it was ahead of that. Uh, but any of the old up videos, I at one point I was kind of deleting them because weren't getting as many views. Like if I updated, I just delete the old one. Then more recently, I decided to start putting them in a playlist, even and just keep them unlisted, just so they were still around. Uh, so um, yeah, but with the where was I? Yeah, so then I just continued on with the theme compilations. I think there's about 50 videos in the playlist right now. Um, and at some point there, I did the Imperial March one, and then I did the Force theme. Those both need to be updated at some point, but they're both over 40 minutes long. So putting together an update of that will still be a little more involved. Um, yeah, and then I know at some point there, I thought it'd be nice to see some of the Star Wars films, what they would be like if we just had the music. So I started working on Revenge of the Sith, started putting that together. Um, that one probably took me about a year to do the whole playlist. It has, I think, 40 videos. Um, and even now, I can look back and there's some stuff that there's some elements of it that could be improved upon. Um, but for the most part, I'm happy with what I did. And then I went on and I did Rogue One. I've done a number of other music type videos, whether it's edits like more recently with the Clone Wars music, um, which it's unfortunate so little of the Clone Wars music has been released, um, or unused score in the films. Um, I know. Oh, there was also I mean to get back to it at some point, but there was one video I did, the reuse of music in the prequels, because um, this is particularly strong in Attack of the Clones because 2002 was a particularly busy year for John Williams composing wise. He also was not really, when he was composing, they still hadn't quite figured out how the whole Battle of Geonosis sequence was going to go and how long, which is why there's a lot of track music for the Phantom Menace, especially in that section, but it's true throughout the whole film. Now, music from both Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones is heard in Revenge of the Sith, but it's not nearly on the same level. There was way more music composed specifically for that film as compared to Attack of the Clones, where a lot of Phantom Menace music got used, especially in the last third of the film. The unused score. Um, so typically, it's I see. So there's for me, there's a difference between unused and unreleased. Unreleased, the music has not been released in any official capacity, whether it's on an album for a soundtrack or by a composer on their website. And in that case, there's a couple channels such as Film Score Media um, and yeah, Darth Star Wars, who go ahead and isolate the video from the audio tracks for the films. Um, there's a couple cases that, for example, in Revenge of the Sith, and certainly with Rogue One. For Rogue One, there's a channel called Complete Star Wars Soundtracks, which is a little misleading because, well, I guess most of the music was there. I had to try and do some isolation myself. I'm not too great at that, so there were a few times for the Rogue One part where I had to isolate a few things. There, I think it was mainly when they left Scarif, and then when they crashed on Edu. There was a little two sections there. Um, uh, yeah, but as far as unused score, that's basically where either the music was typically the the music would be composed for the scene and then just wouldn't be used. There were two examples of that in Revenge of the Sith. Um, for the elevator scene, when they're going up the turbo lift and R2 is dealing with the super battle droids, there's a whole cue written for that that was not used there. They just didn't use the music. Like it fits and everything, so I edited it back in. Um, and so there's been a couple. There's at least 6 videos I've done like that unused score. Music from that cue was used. A little bit of it was used later, um, when Grievous arrives on Utapau and talks to Sidious. Uh, and then another, and then for the other cue for Revenge of the Sith that wasn't used, at least for the scene it was composed for, um, was when I correct myself. Part of it was used, about maybe half of it, when they get captured on the Invisible Hand and taken to Grievous. There's a cue that would start just about when it does the shot of the Invisible Hand uh, right after Obi-Wan's like, "Do you have a plan B?" and cuts the Invisible Hand. That cue doesn't get used at all the way up till, what is it? Right around when they're starting to fight, and I think it was just before. Oh yeah, it was right when Anakin freed Palpatine. That's when the cue starts being used, and then the very ending of it isn't used at all. So I did a video edit putting that back in. I think the most recent one of these type of videos though that I did was for Empire Strikes Back, uh, when the walkers are approaching Echo Base. There's a piano section leading right into the speeders launching and heading out that isn't it doesn't get used. So I put it in there. There's like maybe a measure or two that didn't fit, but I just cut off the beginning, and I think it fit out pretty well. Another similar type video I did was with the Imperial fleet scene. First time you see it, with the introduction of the Imperial March for I think the second time in the film. There's technically one in the opening scene right when the Stalker is launching probes. Um, that one, yeah, that one is interesting because John Williams composed for the scene, and it actually starts all the way back when they're going out, Han and Chewie, to find what ends up being the probe droid, and they that whole section of music isn't used. Uh, the only music for that cue that's used is right after when right when Vader goes Admiral, and then or no, it was Piet that goes Admiral, and then Ozzel and Veers come over and talk to Piet, and then Vader gets involved, and all that whole section there gets used, but the vast majority of the cue isn't used. And what they ended up doing, part of the reason for that is because they weren't anticipating having as many shots of the fleet as they did, but ILM did a really good job. They churned out some really great stuff there. So John Williams had already composed. He does this for pretty much all the films he's in, specifically Star Wars, but he's done them for like Indiana Jones and some other stuff. Uh, he'll put together suites to be played in concerts. So these aren't necessarily like what you'd hear in the film. They're written specifically to highlight the theme or themes. So like there's one for Leia or Yoda, stuff like that. Uh, I think he's done them for the new films too. And sometimes these are included in the end credits or as part of the end credits. But he had written the suite, the concert suite, and so they just ended up using that. And to this day, that is the version people are most familiar with because that's a full piece by itself rather than just an iteration appearing in the film somewhere. Uh, and so the most of that cue is heard when the fleet is being shown. And then it cuts to the other cue uh, when Piet calls Ozzel over to inspect the scan they had picked up. But yeah, that was a whole thing off of Where Do You Find the Unused Score. Uh, yeah. So with the unused score, that's music that was composed, is on one of the albums, and I'm happy to say the original trilogy actually basically all the music got released. There are a few exceptions, but it's way better than with the prequels where there's a good amount of music that wasn't officially released. And Rogue One is another example. Some of the music got picked up on For Your Consideration release, and then other stuff just has to be isolated. The Rise of Skywalker is another example. There's been some music that unfortunately was not released. I mean, this is the case for some of the shows too. Like I mentioned, the Clone Wars, and even the Mandalorian. There's been some stuff that hasn't been released on the official soundtrack, but was composed and in the show. So it's always a little frustrating when that happens. But I mean, I would hope that at some point they'll get to the where they'll go like with Solo. I with Solo it was really because of fan response and fans really wanting stuff like especially the mall scene because that music was not released. Uh, that pushed that it took what a year and a half, 2 years, somewhere like something like that. And they released the deluxe version of the soundtrack, which has everything, and that has not happened with a soundtrack I think since the original trilogy. Because the sequels, not everything gets released. Same thing there. So, um, oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this whole music side of things for probably 2 years, and I mean, I obviously don't know as much as a number of other people. I'd probably put Film Square Media, for example. He would know more than I am, and he's constantly updating his edits and whatnot. But yeah, I it's quite fascinating, and so I currently am kind of on hold with Return of the Jedi. There's some other things I'm working on, and I know that I'm not going to be as able to work on stuff this spring because spring semester will be starting up and I'm taking more credits at university. But yeah, I hope to get back to Return of the Jedi at some point. I think I left off with where I was working on the scene where Vader and Luke talking on Endor, but that one was getting a little tough and there was other stuff that came up. So get back to that. There's a lot of stuff I want to get to. It's just other stuff takes precedence sometimes. So um, yeah, I guess I mean I can probably expand on the stuff I've already said, but if anybody else has any questions, feel free to ask. Let's see here. I'm sure there was. Actually, I'll just mention. As some of you may be aware, I do have a second channel, Darth Plagueis. So I've been doing some similar stuff on that one. There's been some edits and compilations of scenes from a number of things such as Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica, but I mainly founded that with I just wanted to give myself a channel where I could do similar stuff to what I do on the Star Wars channel here, um, but for other franchises. So there's a number of compilations of musical themes from a number of franchises. Marvel, there's some stuff from Marvel. I think the most recent one for that was I did the Magneto theme from X Men First Class, that was pretty interesting to do. Um, hey Ben Von Boom. Oh, thank you, Gunner Commander Jedi. I I was not necessarily expecting to see you on that, but I'm really honored to have you here. I big fan of yours for a while. I really appreciate all the work you've been doing, and uh, thank you. Yeah, I've been meaning to get into doing some sort of Clone Wars edits. But yeah, thank you very much. And Vin Van Voom. Let's see here. Yes. As far as the reuses of music, I that is something I really want to get back to. Um, there's a number of other things I need to wrap up first. And like I had mentioned earlier, the this coming semester is going to make things difficult to. I'm not going to be able to get as much done because I'm taking a pretty hefty credit load. Um, I guess part of it is I want to make sure I do it well. I also like with the first one, the only one so far. I I don't really want to have to update it or redo it. So I want to make sure it's comprehensive and I get it done right. And a big part of that is being familiar with Attack of the Clones. So it may very well have to wait until I've done in Attack of the Clones music only, and won't be and that itself I certainly won't be able to do until I finish Return of the Jedi, and I'm not sure when I'll get that done. I think with when I did Revenge of the Sith, that one took me probably somewhere between 8 months and a year to do that. And Rogue One I did faster, but that's because I was really pushing it because I wanted to get it done fast and I had more time on my hands. Yeah, so I intend to get back to the reuses of music and go through that, and then probably do one for the sequel trilogy as well, because there is an exam. There's especially in Rise of Skywalker, there's a number of reuses of music, um, from mainly from the Last Jedi, but there was obviously some reuses of music from other films in the saga. Like on the Death Star, they reused from Return of the Jedi, and well, Force Awakens reused from A New Hope when Rey pulls the lightsaber. That's from Burning Homestead. Um, yeah, let me see. I don't. Oh yeah, and of course the Emperor's theme, the from Revenge of the Sith, that was reused a couple times in the Rise of Skywalker as well. So yeah. Um, one thing I was doing more of when I started out, and I have not been doing as much, is just edits of scenes and stuff. It's been mainly music for a good while now. Uh, there was this, and I did this actually. I don't know how many of you are familiar. I think I've shared a couple things on the community tab. There's this fan called Darth Angelus. Uh, he's an animator, and he's been working on putting together Heir to the Empire, and he's gotten halfway through the book. Actually, released a movie edit of the first, I guess it's 16 chapters, which he's done, or is it 18? Anyway, he just did a movie edit of those, and he's continuing on. He's done some really great work, um, and but reason that's relevant is because there was a while back there was a Polish brick film channel called Wasaki Films, and he did a a Lego version of that, and I basically took the 25th anniversary audiobook with Mark Thompson, and he had done it in Polish with his own cast, and I did an edit, redubbed it into English using the audiobook, uh, and that I think people were happy with. He's done chapter two. I don't know if I'll ever get to doing that one or not. Couple other edits the I did were there were some scenes from some of the animated shows that I converted into live action from the Rebels, I think mainly, such as the Emperor talking to Minister Hayden. That one in the episode "The World Between Worlds" or whatever it's called. I did one of those. And the reason that worked out, it's not the best because I used Vinay from Rogue One originally. Hayden was gonna be that character, which is why they look so similar. But there's only the one shot or two of Vinay, so on his end of things, he just looks terrible with the edit. Uh, but the Emperor, there's the Padawan revisited version of Return of the Jedi that got to have been released within the last couple years, and I really appreciate it. He went ahead and not Return of the Jedi. What am I saying? Empire Strikes Back. One of the things I kind of wish they'd done differently is when they did the re-release, and which would have been 2004, and of the film with the Emperor scene, and put Ian McDermott in instead of the Clive Revel one. Uh, he looks like in Revenge of the Sith, and it's like no, he should look like in Return of the Jedi. They didn't do the makeup the same. The hood doesn't even look the same. So when he did his edit of the film, I he updated that to look like the Return of the Jedi version of the Emperor, and so I basically just used footage of that for the scene because I thought that made sense. Uh, yeah, that was another one I had done. Um, the animatics, the conceptual animatics for the prequel films, I took a couple of those and I redubbed them. I did the one for Order 66, which has a number of deaths that are not in the film. Um, I did those, so that'd be stuff like, and a number of them are not canon. Um, but I thought it'd be interesting to do, or even some of the deaths like Ki-Adi-Mundi are different from how they were in the film, because I think at the time they were planning for him to be on a different planet, and they ended up changing it to Mygeeto for the film. So that's reflected there. And then the other one I had done was Yoda fighting Sidious, and that one I'm pretty proud of. I don't know if I'll ever get back to doing one of those because I know there was at least one person who'd commented and said, "Oh, can you do the one of Anakin versus Obi-Wan?" It's like those are a little difficult to do. Like I enjoy doing them, but they were quite intensive to do because I was basically having to recreate a whole new audio track because the actual animex themselves they're basically just visual storyboards, and so they only gave them temp audio tracks. They're kind of just to give you the creators an idea of how they're going to go with things, and because of when they're made, they use models from the film before. So in the case of Revenge of the Sith, they're using models for characters from Attack of the Clones. So yeah, I mean, like I say, I like doing them. In fact, I was considering doing the Grievous one. For that one, part of it is an issue of length, um, because that one's got to be like 8 minutes long. Uh, yeah, they're just it's a lot of work to do. So I I may or may not do that at some point. Uh, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not for lack of ideas. Uh, I mean, I have plenty of ideas what to do. It's just there's only so much time and uh, I guess motivation, because that's a big part of it. Yeah, I actually, I think most recently, part of the issue for me now is I'm trying to clear stuff out of unfinished projects that are in progress out of my software so I can update it. Um, and I think most recently, what I've been working on is well, there's this old edit that I've had in mind for probably a year plus now, and it's taken me forever to get to the point where I'm at now. And it's probably got to be what 2/3, 4/5 of the way done, somewhere in there. So as you may or may not be aware, the Clone Wars had a number of unfinished arcs back when it was canceled, um, that have not been adapted or were incomplete. A couple of them got finished or kind of changed up a bit and then released and finished. in season 7. That would be those 3 arcs with the Bad Batch, the Ahsoka one, which got an overhaul by adding the Martez sisters, and the Siege of Mandalore, which also got significant changes. Bad Batch, for the most part, was the same. Uh, in fact, they actually took out some scenes, but the only one that's had any sort of release outside of those 3 was the Crystal Crisis one, which I really wish they had finished, because that features Grievous in it, and it's on Utapau, and it's a pretty good arc. But that one, they basically just the unfinished story reel. They released that not too long, well, along with the Bad Batch, not too long after the show was canceled. Um, but there's a number of other arcs that were either at various stages of production, including just a script being written versus they were actually actively working on it. They may have had dialogue recorded. It's not unclear to what level each of these were in progress, but there were a number of them, like Yoda on Kashyyyk, or Ahsoka discovering the Sith Temple under the Jedi Temple. A whole bunch of other ones, Son of Dathomir and Dark Disciple. Uh, Dark Disciple got adapted. It was going to be an unprecedented 8 episodes. They were gonna, I think it was intended for what would have been season 7. They were going to, they're going to put like near the beginning of the season, it was going to be 4 episodes, and then near the end of the season, it was going to be 4 episodes. Uh, that obviously did not happen. They adapted the 8. Christy Golden, I think it was, wrote the novel based off of the scripts. And there's some story reel type stuff, animation wise, that has been released. So those are interesting to look at, but it's not like a full episode or anything. That's the case for a couple of other episodes too, like the one with Cad Bane and Boba Fett. Which again, it's unfortunate that there isn't more. And then Son of Dathomir got adapted into a comic series, and I really wish they would go and certainly for those two, Son of Dathomir and Dark Disciple, if they would finish those and make those into episodes. I've taken all this time to say that, but yes, Dark Disciple. There's a scene which I adapted where Sidious contacts Dooku on Christophsis. I updated that at some point, but yeah, I did that a while back. That's on the channel. It's a pretty short one, and I utilized the audiobook for that. But the edit I've been working on very, very, very slowly um, is adapting Dooku's speech on Raxus Secundus in that book. Uh, Basically, Quinlan Voss and Asajj Ventress infiltrate on Raxus, and Dooku's giving like this speech before he gets an award or whatever, and trying to find a way to adapt that using Clone Wars footage, like I did with the other video. So that's been some part of it is keeping the foot on the gas pedal, I guess, and part of the reason for that is because it's rather difficult to try and get footage to work. Uh, I've been primarily using hologram footage from, I think it's which Peace on Both Sides or whatever the episode was called, where Padme and Mina Bonteri meet and they try to instigate a ceasefire and armistice at the very least between the Confederacy and the Republic, which obviously goes nowhere. I think that was done in 2 episodes, but I think it's the first one where the Confederate Senate is discussing it and Dooku's there in hologram form. So it's I hope to get it done at some point here, but it's definitely not the easiest thing I've done. Uh, yeah, and then more recently, this will actually be for the second channel. I I there's all those Star Wars kill count compilations out there. There's a couple. Well, I think CT 55555. He's pretty much done. But Headhunter and a couple other channels are keeping up with those. Uh, but so I did one of those for the 2003 Micro Series Grievous. That was mainly just to see what it was like, what if I was capable of doing something, and I knew it was going to be short, and that's partly why I did it. It was almost a test, and I was happy with how that turned out. Though I was a little taken aback that it got blocked so many times, and I had to put in an appeal, I think, so that it'd be allowed to go live on the channel. I really don't know. It was it can be more than 2.5, 3 minutes long, and for some reason it kept getting blocked. Yeah, but no. So I put together a kill count for Worf, the Klingon warrior from the Star Trek franchise. Uh, I was a little taken aback, but there's very little in the way for Star Trek kill counts. In fact, as part of putting it together, I was basing a good chunk of it off of somebody did a video back in 2010 of putting together Cisco, Picard, and Worf's kill counts. I mean, yeah, I mean, I wanted to update it. I wanted to improve upon it. I wasn't going to count some of the kills he did, and there was I think a couple kills he missed. But considering how much he was dealing with, I totally get it. And I'm appreciating that he did all that work back then, because it would be quite involved to try and go through all these episodes of the various shows to pick up uh, all the different kills and whatnot. But like holograms, I'm not counting kills like that. But I'll probably have that up on the channel within. I may even get it up tonight. Um, if I don't, it'll be sometime this week, uh, or upcoming week. I guess it's Saturday. But Happy New Year, by the way. Happy New Year. So yeah. So I started this with the intention of probably running about an hour till 7. So if anybody has any more questions, feel free to ask, um, and I'll see what I can do to answer them. I guess I should add too that there's a couple kind of goofball edits that I've thrown in, that I've done. There was I did uh Maul wants to kill Sidious. That one I I don't even know what to think of it. It's just something I made because I thought it'd be funny, and I don't even know what to think of it now. If I think it's super funny, but that's one I threw together a while back. And then there was a YouTube poop I did because I just wanted to try out making one about Nute Gunray and Phantom Menace. So that one's out there, and that was interesting to put together. I don't know if I'll do another one or not. Um, and then there was another one I did about Anakin and Sidious talking about sand. Um, yes, as far as rebranding, I it's something I've had on my mind almost since I started doing the music videos. Uh, at this point, I still haven't changed it, partly because I really don't know what I change it to, and there's the whole process of going through the rebranding, um, with something different. Uh, it's something I've thought about. It hasn't been too heavy on my mind. It may happen in the future. I guess part of it is I'm so used to the moniker of Star Wars Opinion, um, and I'm not sure what to turn to, and I don't necessarily want to confuse people if I can help it. I guess another part of it is the URL now is actually Star Wars Opinion, and I'm honestly not sure if I would be able to change it to a different channel name. Um, yeah, I may very well change it. If I do, I'll probably put out a poll and kind of get input on what to rename it. But yeah, in fact, with the other one, the other channel, Darth Plagueis, I had no idea what to call that, and I really don't know if that one is the best to call it. I actually got a comment asking from someone asking why a Star Wars Sith would be uploading Star Trek, but yeah. Hello, Sci-Fi Source. How are you? Good to see you. Um, yeah, yeah, I, if I, like I say, I really don't know about changing it, how exactly that would go. But it may very well happen in the future. Uh, yeah, I guess one edit that I am actually pretty proud of that I totally forgot to mention is the the Darth Plagueis conversation in Revenge of the Sith is significantly longer in the novelization of the film, and early on I ended up doing an edit of that uh, using the audiobook, and it I'm happy with the end result. There are things I would do differently now because I was kind of getting started back then. Um, I don't necessarily think I'll try and update it or anything. And but I was overall, I still am pretty pleased with how that turned out. And yeah, um, I guess related to that, I let's see here. I can't complain. New semester's coming up, and hopefully that'll go well. Uh, Hopefully it won't impact what I can upload too much. But I do anticipate that being a thing. And let's see here. I mean, I don't know how aware of Star Trek Darth Plagueis is. I just that he's actually my favorite Sith Lord. I kind of just put that there because why not? And at the time, I wasn't necessarily gonna do Star Trek uploads per se, other than music wise, and then I kind of did some other stuff as well besides the music. Um, and I mean, I guess I'll just agree to disagree with you on Star Trek. I mean, for me, Star Wars is still going to take top every time. But there's a number of other franchises, including Star Trek, that I happen to enjoy. So, Battlestar Galactica would be another one. But yeah. And since I'm scrolling through this all again, I guess two other things I'd mention is I did the Maul versus Vizsla rescored, which was based off of a video I did where basically no music. That one was interesting to do. That one I someone thought I had done a really clean. Oh yeah, yeah. No, either way, it's all cool. Yeah, I enjoy Star Trek. I'm happy to see that you do too. Uh, but with the video Vizsla and Maul, um, uh, that one only worked. I had somebody comment because I guess they thought I'd done a really good isolation and reduction of that, which I really am no good at. I haven't done it enough to really say I have any skill with it. But that only worked because there was a some of the special features include deleted or extended scenes, and that whole sequence was going to be a good amount longer. In fact, once after seeing the unfinished animation intercut with what ended up making it in, you realize there's some issues with what the stuff they did keep, and it doesn't necessarily flow together. I don't think somebody who hasn't seen the other stuff would notice it, but for me, I kind of do now. Um, but unlike a lot of the extended or deleted scenes, they for Clone Wars, it actually didn't have any music, and it was the whole sequence. So I thought that'd be a prime opportunity to do something like that, and it worked out pretty good. I used the other audio and tracked it to everything. Cut out the stuff that's didn't get used and put in a better video source. And yeah, so I was quite pleased with how that turned out. Um, and yeah, another thing I did was, this was another old video I did. Was there was a video out there at the time. This must have been 2.5 years ago. Yeah, something along those lines. A channel had put out a video which basically took from the Revenge of the Sith video game and the old Battlefront 2 video game and put them together for Operation Nightfall. And so I basically built off of that and put together this whole sequence of an extended Order 66, as well as Anakin, well, Darth Vader, leading the 501st Legion to attack the Jedi Temple, uh, and put it all together along with animatics from the film, as well as stuff actually used in the film, some of the live action sequences, and put that all together. And that one, I edit wise, as far as the editing goes, it could be better. Like I say, it was one of my more earlier. How do I want to say that? It's one of the earlier videos I've done. There's obviously things I've improved upon that I could go back and do. I don't know that I will. Overall, though, I think it holds up, at least in spirit. Uh, Even if, I mean, I'm probably my own worst critic in that regard. There were, I think the biggest thing from people who watched that was wishing that more of that stuff had made it into the films. Uh, I think part of the reason, and this is just me speculating, that a lot of those Jedi scenes didn't make it, that were uh, conceived of conceptually in the animatics, for example, that didn't make it into the films. Well, the film, I should say, it's Revenge of the Sith. I'm guessing a lot of that has to do with George wanting to cut back on costs, and there's plenty of stuff they conceived of, and it may have not been the most efficient, financially speaking, to shoot them, especially if they weren't going to add anything to the storyline. As it is, there was a lot of stuff that was shot and actually finished up that did not make it into the film. Most especially with the opening sequence, with the invisible hand. There's a good, I don't want to exaggerate, but there's got to be 20 minutes to half an hour of material that was shot, some of it finished, some of it unfinished, that is not in the final film. Um, a number of different things, but yeah. Uh, I don't know if, what was I gonna say? I don't know if you're still on Sci-Fi Source, and I don't know if you were on earlier to hear, but I do have a Worf kill count that I will be putting up on the second channel within the next, I don't know, couple days, possibly tonight. I don't know if I'll work on that or not, but yeah, I am. I think yeah, I actually am scrolling a little bit through some of my videos just to kind of get an idea of stuff I've done. I did see there have been a couple of trailers. They were the Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, and there was an, there was one from the Old Republic that I did too, though that one's not complete. Um, that I did because I thought it was interesting to see. And for a couple of those, there have been some folks who've done some work in that regard. In fact, that's why I don't think I'll ever update the Revenge of the Sith one, because there's somebody who ended up doing. He got, there was a couple sections in the audio that I either misinterpreted or didn't quite do right, and he did a much better job. Though with my Attack of the Clone ones, Attack of the Clones one, I think is probably the best one on YouTube right now because for the same reason that mine Revenge of the Sith one is not as good as the other one. There was, I think, some stuff that I part of the issue with those is tracking down source cues. In the case of Attack of the Clones, there's and this one has been used in a couple different trailers. It's a cue called the Forest Battle, which was composed to Return of the Jedi for the Battle of Endor, and didn't make it into the film. And it's a couple sections of that have been used multiple times in trailers, including I think the first one it was used for was Attack of the Clones, but it's been used for at least one or two Clone Wars trailers and a couple of other things. But yeah, I put together edits like that. I know there's been requests for another Old Republic trailer. Um, that the one I didn't quite get finished because there's a couple music sources I'm not quite clear on and still haven't come across. So I'd probably finish it once I have those, but otherwise no. And some of the other Old Republic trailers, some of them use Star Wars music, and others use music. I'm going to guess that were composed for that, or at the very least are not Star Wars in origin, and I'm not familiar with them. One of the I guess it was a Knights of the Eternal Empire or something. That trailer, I think it was called Hope. That one there was a request for, and it's not a piece of Star Wars music, so I'm not as familiar just right off the bat, and I still have no idea where it's from, and it may not have ever been released. It may have been written specifically for the trailer, and then has never seen the light of day other than in that piece. So, um, yeah, uh, yeah. The hmm, Rogue One, Rogue One. Oh, that's right. I've done a couple edits too. There was the unfinished animatic of Boba Fett versus Cad Bane. Um, that I just edited in some Mandalorian music because I thought it made it work better. I know there's been a couple videos I've done very sparsely on some lore. I know I did one on the Jedi High Council about a year and a half ago. Um, yeah, just reflecting on some of these, I don't think most of the videos I've made I regret making. Some of them I obviously could do a better job now than I could back then. Um, but yeah, I mean, when I started the channel, and this is still kind of true now, I still appreciate the input that a lot of people have. But I guess still ultimately it boils down to a lot of what I do is because I would like to see what that looks like, and I haven't seen somebody else do it, so I thought might as well do it myself. And in a lot of cases along the way, I learned something. Um, One thing I really was happy about was going through the Revenge of the Sith and Rogue One soundtracks was how much I just stuff about the film I learned more of just by studying the soundtrack when I was putting those together. Because for both, I got quite familiar with both soundtracks because I was working with them on such a consistent basis. So, uh, well, I dare say that if I put to it, I could probably play Revenge of the Sith in my head, the soundtrack, quite easily after hearing it so many times. I mean, I already heard it a number of times outside of working on it, but after working on it for sure, now it's yeah. So, oh, sorry, I missed the one comment. Let's see. Oh, well, thank you, Vin Van Boom. I appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, I enjoy the Star Wars films too. I don't know how much I can say beyond that. But yeah, thank you. Sci-fi source. Yes. Rogue One. I I remember when it came out, and I remember when they were part of the promotional material they'd done was for two cues. I think it was Approach to Edu and what's the cue called with Jin? Jin's in trouble. Jin. It's the one where she's sneaking up the tower, I guess, up to the platform, and then it ends with Krennic's theme when he comes in his shuttle. Um, I remember when they did promos for that, uh, and it was great to. I wish there was more of this where you can see they'd release more of behind the scenes when they're actually recording the music with the orchestra. Um, but yeah, as far as Michael Giacchino, yeah, he's one of my top, I don't know, 5, 10 composers. I really appreciate some of the work he's done, um, and he's been in a lot of stuff. He did 3 newer Star Trek films. He's done Rogue One. He's done Doctor Strange. He's done well, like even the new Spider-Man film. He's done the Spider-Man Homecoming trilogy. Um, I know he's in a bunch of other stuff, which is not popping into my head right now. Yeah, there were a number of things I really liked that he did with Rogue One, and I I mean it's crazy sometimes how little time composers get. Uh, whether I think in particular the ones that come to example with Star Wars was with is that is him with Rogue One, because I think the two shortest periods of time that people got to put out a soundtrack was him in Star Wars. That is, was him with Rogue One, and then John Williams with Empire Strikes Back, and those are two of the best soundtracks that uh, for Star Wars films, in my opinion. Yes, Jin's path is clear. Yes, that's right. And speaking of Hidu, for some strange reason, I'm not sure if it was recorded at the same time or if it was like added on later. But the whole approach to Edu thing, there was a section of music in there, including the Krennic's shuttle leaving the Death Star, that for some reason was not put as part of the official release. In fact, I don't even remember if Jin's Path is Clear is on the official album. I think that was sourced either from that promotional release or from the For Your Consideration score. Hi, Kylo Ren. Yeah, I think he did a good job on No Way Home. I don't know how much of this was him and how much of it was the director and studio executives and all that. Uh, I do wish he had. I wish some of the older themes that got reutilized for some of the characters, like from the other Spider-Man films outside of the MCU, which I guess they're part of the MCU now. Uh, I wish those themes had had a stronger presence. I'm not necessarily complaining, and I guess I get why stuff was done the way it is. There could be a number of reasons, whether it be um, they just decided they didn't want that, or he may have decided that, or it may have been an issue of avoiding not necessarily copyright infringement, but utilizing another composer's work too much. Because I've noticed that with a number of films where they've utilized themes from other. Honestly, though, with a lot of, I think the biggest thing that comes to mind for me in this regard is Harry Potter. I really wish composers had carried, well, like the composers after John Williams. I really wish they'd carried his themes forward more directly than they did. But I don't know how much is that on them or and how much was on the executives and the director. Let's see here. Okay, so it did come out in the. Okay, okay, yeah. There must have been at least 6 cues that were not that didn't get an official release that came out in the For Your Consideration. Like this could just be me, but compared to like some of the sequel trilogy stuff, it feels like Rogue One, a significant amount of the score that got released was not released on the official album, but got the for your consideration release. And yeah, as far as composers go, I honestly haven't really put thought into trying to put a specific ranking of composers. So, I mean, I'm obviously not going to try and do that now. Because it'd be too easy to say stuff off my head, and on I enjoy a number of composers, and I think a lot of great composers have done a lot of great things and have contributed a lot to various things, including Star Wars. Um, so I don't know that I can start to rank them like that. But yes, uh, probably within my top 5, 10, Michael Giacchino is uh, yeah, 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 and I know I mentioned Star Trek earlier. I really like what Jerry Goldsmith did. I think most of the Star Trek composers I really enjoy. Though I think the ones that stand out are probably Cliff Idleman and Jerry Goldsmith for their film scores, and then though I do think James Horner was great, and I think Giacchino was great, and I do think what's his name? He did Generations. He was one of their main TV composers. I think his score was underrated when it came out. I get why people wanted Jerry Goldsmith to come back, but I think yes, yeah, I know what you mean, Vin Von Boom. Yes, okay, so it looks like Sci-Fi Source has a more clear way of stating what I was trying to get at. Uh, yeah, so but yeah, as far as the TV shows go, though, in Star Trek, I'd probably put David Bell at number one, just because the atmosphere his music provides, and a number of the repeated cues I really enjoy. Um, so uh, plus he got to score some really good episodes of, like, for example, DS9 or Voyager and stuff like that. Um, so it looks like it's a bit past 7. Um, I guess I'll do a final call if somebody else has something they want to add or a question they want to ask. If not, I'll probably close down the live stream in the next couple minutes. Um, but yeah. Speaking of composers, one thing that I always thought was interesting is that Danny Elfman doesn't have, as I recall, a particularly standard background in music the way a lot of composers do, and kind of just I don't want to say something that's incorrect, but as I understand it, he kind of just fell into it at a later age than would be considered typical for composers who tend to start out already as musicians, as children or in high school and whatnot, and then get into scoring. I guess another thing too is I think it's interesting with some composers, the ones who uh, actually orchestrate all their stuff, because that's something that doesn't happen. Oh, yes, Dennis McCarthy, that's his name. I totally blanked on that. Yeah, by far, he has to be the guy who scored the most episodes of Star Trek. Um, because he was on Next Generation from the beginning, did a whole big chunk of that. He scored Generations, which I think makes sense because for all practical purposes, Generations is just an extended episode of the show. Um, and yeah, he was on DS9, he was on Voyager, he was on Enterprise, um, and I is he there he was the one who brought Jay Chataway on board. There was the whole group of composers they had on those shows. I really wish there. I don't even know if how much of this is they can't get work versus they're kind of just done, retired. I mean, because they're on the older side, pretty much all of them. I wish there was more work we could hear from them. Um, I actually have not seen any of the newer Star Trek shows. I may or may not get into those, but as I understand it, none of those composers from the '90s are working on those shows. I could be wrong though. They may have brought them back in some regard. One or two of them. I don't know. Yes, yes, it did. And I there's and I apologize to anybody who's feels a little miffed about this going kind of Star Trek, but I mean I do have the two channels, so whatever. I do, I yeah, I yeah, with the I know there were a couple of areas where people thought that he kind of ripped himself off, um, which you could argue all composers do at some point. And I don't know that I'd call it ripping off. It's they have their own style and they're going to do a lot of the same similar things, even if it's two different projects. Because I think the two things people were pointing out was there are some similarities between the battle with Lursa and Bator's Bird of Prey that later you hear on Way of the Warrior in on DS9. And then the main theme for the film actually sounds quite similar. That uh, not necessarily similar. There are a lot of parallels to the Deep Space Nine theme, and he composed all of those. Uh, and yes, I that's one thing that First Contact on for the Next Generation films. I do really enjoy what Jerry Goldsmith did, but the music is not Next Generation feeling. It feels like a Star Trek movie versus Generations, where the music was literally composed by a guy who composed probably the certainly a plurality, if not the majority of no, probably not the majority, but certainly a plurality of the Next Generations episode music. Um, so it shows when he because I'm glad he got the opportunity he did to score the film. Um, well, it's been great having you folks all on. I really glad I was able to do this. It was a lot of fun. Uh, yeah, I I guess I will sign off now. I'll probably see about working on the video I mentioned, Worf kill count. Hope to get that uploaded pretty soon here. But in the meantime, Happy New Year. May the force be with you. Live long and prosper. And I hope to see you all soon. I hope to do something like this again. Thank you.